In 1948, we established the State of Israel. In 1967, we liberated the United Jerusalem. I say this for those who continue to claim that the Jewish people do not have a historical, national, or religious link to our land, and there are such people. I show the coin so people who continue to call and work towards our destruction understand that they'll never succeed. We're here to stay.
Naftali Bennett is here. He is Israel's Minister of Economy and head of the right-wing Jewish Home Party. He is widely considered the third most powerful politician in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government. He is here in the United States as negotiations continue on two issues central to Israel's future: Iran's nuclear program and Palestinian statehood. The major Western powers resumed talks with Iran this week in Geneva in the hopes of agreeing on an interim nuclear deal. Reaching a two-state solution, meanwhile, is a continuing priority for Secretary of State John Kerry. I am pleased to have Naftali Bennett at this table for the first time. Welcome.
It's great to be here, Charlie.
Now, let me just say a couple of things about you. A quick biographical picture. We'll talk about, obviously, the things that interest me, which is Iran and also the Palestinian negotiations.
Sure.
And domestic politics in Israel. But you first. I mean, you're a latecomer to politics per se. You were very successful business person within the technology community. You know, what did you decide that? I mean, what came? Help me tell the story of how you end up as one of the most promising politicians in Israel.
I could actually trace it back to a single moment. I'd been in the military. I'm a major in reserve in one of the commando units. After the Army, I built a company that you probably use it. Whenever you log on to Chase.com or Citibank.com, my Israeli company, make sure it's you and not someone who stole your password. 70% of American transactions go through that software today. Sold the company, and that's the point where I ought to have been in the Caribbean with some cocktail drink in those little umbrellas, and the Second Lebanon War started. And I was called in to command a team that searched for missile launchers that were out targeting Israel. And that war changed my path. A few things. First of all, it was the first time I fought while I'm a dad. I had my first-born, Yoni, was 1 year old. It's a whole different ball game when you're a dad and you're leaving kids behind. But more profoundly, I realized something that I didn't get until that war, that we're in a neighborhood and there are people who don't want us there. Now, that sounds pretty obvious now, but for my generation, Charlie, who grew up, I was born in 1972. As a child in the 80s, I never experienced an existential threat, and we sort of thought that if we try hard enough, we'll just have peace and all will be okay. And in fact, I was in Lebanon, and these guys, Hezbollah, are shooting thousands of missiles at my parents' house in Haifa, in the northern city of Haifa. And they don't have any territorial claim. They're not saying, give us this city and we'll make peace. They just said, we want to kill you. We don't want your state to be there. And then I realized that, you know, I'm not going to go back into high-tech, which actually is my passion. I always had a vision of building Israeli Nokia, which is no longer a good idea. And then I joined then opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu as his chief of staff for a couple of years, went back to high-tech, and then ultimately formed this party and ran in the elections, and we did fairly well.
But not as well as expected. Some people thought you'd do better.
I'm very pleased. Actually, I sort of took over an existing party.
Because you were the talk of the campaign, and then Lapid...
Yeah, there were two...
Lapid did much better than people expected him to do.
That's right. He did very well.
He became the story. That's
correct. And the party that I led was a story. It exists already 100 years. It predates Israel. It was the religious people... you know, those with the yarmulke.
Right.
And I came and I said, and it was down to 3 seats in the Knesset, which is nothing. It used to have 12, 9, 7, 6, 3. It was about to evaporate. And my thesis is we don't need anymore a religious party. And I changed the mission to be a mission of restoring Jewish identity in Israel. And I opened it up to secular Israelis, to non-religious. And in fact, 5 out of the 12 seats we got are from secular voters. And part of our MKs are secular. So it's a whole new
So what do you think
vision.
They're voting for?
They're voting for a strong Jewish heritage. You know, lots of kids in Israel have never been to the Western Wall, what's called the Kotel. So we need to strengthen our spirit. and open up the economy. So these are some of the things we're doing. And I'm Minister of Economy, and I think we're going through a historic change in Israel's economy.
What's the difference in the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Economy?
Yeah, that's a good question. The finance minister is the fiscal guy. He's responsible for the budget, and I'm the executive branch who actually executes the policies and employment, industry, high-tech, all of that stuff.
Tell me what you worry most about with respect to Israel and its future. There are those who worry that the idea of a two-state solution may be slipping away, and that's not a good thing, because that's not what Israel wants to be. There are those who worry that the idea of an occupier has done great damage to Israel's own psyche. Tell me how you feel about those things and people
well, you
who
asked
love
two different
the country.
questions.
Agreed, two different. But these are people who love the country, who love Israel.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
And we just did a show here last night called "The Promised Land" by Arshad, who you read.
Yeah, and I admire his writing.
Exactly right.
Though I don't agree with much of what he writes, but still I admire the man his writing. So you asked two different questions. I mean, my main focus, I'm not that worried. I'm not complacent. We've got a lot of work. We're an imperfect state. But my main drive right now is turning Israel into what I call a lighthouse nation. And what I mean, we've got this Islamic storm going on, you know, from Libya to Tunis, from Iran to Damascus. It's here to stay. It might be 10 years, 20, 50, 100, I don't know. So we've got this storm, and my vision of Israel is a lighthouse in the storm. And what I mean a lighthouse, we've got to have a strong economy, strong military, but that's not enough. We need to actually project light and do good. What's called tikkun olam, or fixing the world. It's sort of this Jewish obsession we've had since Moses, Abraham, Jesus, Marx, the works. Sometimes while trying to fix the world, we sort of screw it up a bit. But I view our mission as doing good, and I'm tired of being defined by a conflict. We've got conflicts. There's 50 other countries with conflicts. We're not the only ones. Israel is not about conflict. It's about being a lighthouse nation. Now, in respect to the Palestinian conflict, I'm well aware of what's going on. I'll tell you my thoughts. We're in discussions right now, and it's no secret I oppose establishing a Palestinian state within Israel. I think it's a disaster. But having said that, I belong to a government whose prime minister explicitly said that he does want to achieve a state, and I joined his government knowingly so. So here's what I did with Netanyahu. We agreed that he can go ahead, do the negotiations. If it push comes to shove, or if a deal is reached, we'll bring it to a national referendum, and the people will vote. Whatever they decide, I'll respect. At the same time, I am seeking peace with the Palestinians. You know, Charlie, I've fought in 5 different wars and conflicts. I don't want this. It's bad. Wars are bad. My friends died. I buried them. Here's what I think we need to do, and here's what's going on ground. On ground in the West Bank, what you call the West Bank, what I call Judea and Samaria, there's a positive trend. There's more joint Palestinian-Israeli businesses. 30,000 Palestinians work with Israelis. So what's the end
game for you then?
Well,
the end game for you is that Israel should never give up what you call Judea, Samaria, and I call the West Bank, and all the territory to the Jordan River will be Israel. And any Palestinians in that area will not have a state of their own. They will be living in Israel.
No. So here's my, saying the end state, I don't know. But I can tell you where I think it's going.
But you don't want a perpetual state of what exists today, do you?
I agree, I don't. And here's what I suggest. Charlie, in the West Bank, there's 2 types of areas. There's the Palestinian-controlled areas and the Israeli-controlled areas. In the Palestinian-controlled areas, you have 2 million Palestinians and no Israelis. In the Israeli-controlled areas, you have 400,000 Israelis and 70,000 Palestinians. So here's what I suggest. In the Palestinian-controlled areas, let them have full self-governance. Elections, pay your own taxes, build your own homes, have your own economy, do whatever you want. We don't want to govern you, barring one thing. We have to have overall security responsibility. Otherwise, it'll become a terror state like Gaza. Now, in the Israeli-controlled areas, I would apply Israeli law and sovereignty. I would offer full equal citizenship to those 70,000 Palestinians. They would be offered to be an equal Israeli citizen like myself, like 1.7 million Israeli Arabs voting for the Knesset. And to that degree, we would separate. They'd have their own entity, which, as I said, it's lacking. It's not a state in the sense that they don't have their own army, because I'm not willing to risk my kids again, Charlie. I'm just not willing to do that.
If you were a Palestinian, would you accept that?
Absolutely.
You would?
Look,
without, I mean, there is a limit. Your limits on your own freedom. There's a limit on terms of what you can do that is defined by another state.
No, there's always this discourse of diplomatic agreements,
right,
and it ain't going anywhere.
So the diplomat, basically you just said that what the Kerry's trying to do ain't going anywhere in your judgment.
I think not only in my judgment. I think if you ask any reasonable Palestinian and a reasonable Israeli, some may want it to go, but no one thinks it's actually going to.
So what does the prime minister whose government you serve think?
Well, I was surprised when we met post-elections and started negotiations. I asked him, "What's your goal?" And he told
just exactly what I just asked you.
Yeah, and he said he wants a Palestinian state.
Yeah.
And no, I know, I get it, and I think he's wrong. I think that
he's wrong to want a Palestinian state
in the heart of Israel
under any circumstances.
You know what, Charlie? Let me ask you. I mean, in the past 20 years, we vacated 3 places. Southern Lebanon, we're out, and they shot over 8,000 missiles at us, and today they have 100,000 missiles in a place that we vacated, and the UN Security Council said not one missile will enter. We vacated the West Bank in Oslo, and from the very areas that we vacated, they sent over hundreds of suicide bombers into my city of Haifa, of Tel Aviv, of Jerusalem, and over 1,000 Israelis were butchered and murdered in coffee shops and buses. Then we tried it again, a third time. We vacated Gaza. It's a Jew-free land.
But also you vacated the Sinai.
And hold on, we'll talk about Sinai in a moment. The Egyptians never talked about wiping out the Jewish nation, certainly not over the past years prior to. Their goal was to restore Sinai. Here we have people who are explicitly saying we want to wipe out Israel. We vacated the Gaza Strip, and they've shot thousands of missiles days after we left. President Peres said it's going to become the Singapore of the Middle East. It became the Vietnam of the Middle East. So how many times do we have to hand over land to people that then, minutes later, shoot missiles at my children? I live 5 kilometers from the Green Line inside of smaller Israel. I've got 4 kids. I'm not going to put them in harm's way.
So what does that say to you, that the Palestinians are a different kind of people? The Palestinians are what? What does it say to you?
Well, it says that the Palestinian leadership is day in, day out, educating their children to hate. While we learn all these peace songs, if you turn on right now the Palestinian Sesame Street, you'll see them talking about how the Jews are bad, how the Israelis don't have a right to exist. When you educate your kids and poison their minds, well, yeah, then they indeed grow up hating Israel. So the first step that needs to happen, the Palestinians need to recognize Israel as the Jewish homeland and stop educating their kids to want to kill Israelis. That's the deal.
Let's suppose that, this is a hypothetical, let's suppose that it would be possible, and that what you have just listed as experience in Lebanon, South Lebanon, the experience at Gaza, and the experience on the West Bank could be different, and that Israel's security